everyone, and welcome to a Planning for Success workshop. So these workshops are designed to hopefully help you get started for the new trimester, but also to support you throughout your academic journey here at university. This is a series. We have 3 videos altogether in these workshops. We have one all about getting started and course profiles, and then another on effective study techniques. This video though will be all about time management and planning. So my name is Pauline. I am one of your boat mentors, and I'm actually a mature age student. So I think I had a 10-year gap between studies, which is a really, really long time. And when I came into university, I basically had to relearn how to be a student. And I had to learn all of the study techniques. I had to learn time management skills, and basically just how to even get started at university. How about you, Shay?
I'm also a mature age student and a boat mentor, obviously. So I definitely haven't had a very linear academic journey either. I've started a degree, moved states, started another degree, and definitely it's been a learning journey, and there's lots that I've really pulled out over the years. So hopefully in this workshop we can really emphasize some of those points that we've learned ourselves by not taking the straightforward path. And I think it's also, just while we've got her here to address on the screen, you can also see Jackie Wilkinson. So she's the student retention and pass coordinator. So she works really behind the scenes here at Griffith University, especially within the sciences group, just to make sure that students are supported and there's opportunities to really engage with your studies and keep you here throughout the entire degree. We want to make sure that, and Jackie definitely wants to make sure that you make it to the end of your degree, and not just that, but you do a great job and you get something out of it more than just a degree.
So, like we said before, this workshop is all about time management. We have 168 hours in a week, but what do we actually use that for? And how many of those hours are dedicated to study? So, there is a really great study planner on the Griffith website. If you Google Griffith Study Planner, this should come up. And basically, this is within a web page, and these blocks are movable. And basically, what you can do is put in how many hours you use for sleeping, how many hours you use for transport, maybe how many hours you use for other things outside of study, like meeting up with people, work, grocery shopping, things like that. And then you're actually left with how many hours is actually dedicated to study in a week. And what we find is that usually there's actually not much. I mean, I know transport for me takes like about 2 to 3 hours every day, and then sleep about 8 hours, sometimes 9, because I like my sleep. And then I also want to dedicate some time for things outside of study, right? So making sure that I have those 40 hours. So if I'm doing a full course trimester, that's 40 credit points, at least 40 hours of study in a week. Am I actually meeting that? And I think that's really, really important to recognize that, we like to think that we are studying all the time and that we are actually dedicating all this time to study, but are we actually? Do we actually have the time to do that in a week?
And I think it's also, just to really clarify as well, with that 10 hours of commitment, that's inclusive of your contact hours. So that's including your lectures, your workshops. It's overall, are you meaning 10 hours for that course? So usually you're hitting about 4 or 5 hours a week of study for each course. So are you fitting that in amongst with everything else? It's really difficult to see until you kind of look at it all broadly. So definitely check this study planner out and get a better idea of what your week looks like and where those little gaps are. Can you use them better?
A quick overview, I suppose, of how we can go into a new trimester really prepared. Well, one would be to prepare a schedule for your trimester, but also weekly. I mean, Shay and I will talk through our planning kind of process as we go through this workshop, but a really good overview is that we usually like to do a trimester and weekly schedules as well. And we like to break study into chunks as well, and that's what we recommend doing. Obviously, when you look at your course profile, that usually list your learning objectives and your learning activities every week. If you haven't seen the video all about course profiles yet, that's a good time after to have a look at that. Maybe after this video.
Maybe pause this, watch that one, come back.
Maybe come back, or you can do it afterwards, whichever one you prefer. But breaking study into chunks really make it easy to tackle in a new trimester. But also in a more micro sense, it is creating those to-do lists. So what do you actually need to do in a day, maybe in a week, but putting that together in a list. And Shay will actually talk through a few of her tips now, and they're quite great tips. So I'm excited to listen to them.
So I think just 3 things to really keep in mind when you are starting to plan, right? So the first thing is course profiles are your friends. So I know it sounds a little corny, but I'm trying to just make a point here that your course profile should be something integral to your studies. It should be something that, you don't just look at once and glimpse over and go, right, I know what's going on.
Done.
No, there is a lot of information in there that's going to be able to orientate you for the entire trimester. You'll be able to see where you're starting the trimester and what content's going to be covered all the way through to week 12. So you can have an idea already what's coming. Looking at the assessment section, when are they due? When should I start preparing? When do I need to block in time and really start thinking backwards of how I'm going to set myself up, because you don't want to get to week 8, 9 and then be like, oh God, what should I study? What was I meant to know?
Oh, there was an assessment that was due. Oh yeah, that would be the worst. That would be the worst.
So really making the most of that course profile and the information that's in there, and making sure that you've incorporated it into whatever schedule or to-do list or however you're going to organize your life during the trimester, making sure that's a really key part and really providing that skeleton that's going to structure your entire trimester. So that's why that one's up the top. It is the big guy. And if you want to know what specific, like what should I pull out of a course profile, that's that first video. So definitely watch it if you want a bit more info there. The second one is don't just focus on your fave. And when I say that, I'm talking about in your courses. Sometimes we like all the courses, but a lot of the times it's some we really enjoy and some not so much. And I know for myself at least, usually the ones that I enjoy are the ones that kind of just make a little bit of sense or are easier for me to tackle, or it's not as much content, so I find I can, progress really well. And there's a tendency to really just kind of allocate a lot of your time to that one because it feels good. You feel successful, you feel like you're progressing. But that's when we really need to stand back a bit and think about, okay, I need to reflect on why this is easy. And it's usually because we have a good foundational knowledge or the concepts that just some people click with some things. But it's important not to neglect those courses that are harder, more difficult, not as fun. That's a big one as well. Is some just don't feel fun. Yeah, it's foundational knowledge, or it's something that is kind of maybe you have to do as part of your degree, but you don't particularly like this. It's important not to neglect those ones because often those are the ones that are requiring more time. Yes. So we need to think about how are we allocating that time. So we said 4 courses, 40 credit points, 40 hours. So does that mean you divide everything so each course gets 10 hours like they recommend? Or do you kind of come in with a bit of a tactic? Do you think a little smarter and go, all right, well, I've got this one course. Maybe you're in second year and you're doing level 2 courses, but you've got an elective that's level 1. Is it going to require as much time and energy as those level 2s?
Maybe not.
Probably not. Maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And really evaluating, okay, well, I kind of find that one easy. So I probably don't need... I find that after, 7 hours of contact time, I'm confident. I feel like I can pass, I can perform well. And it's my other courses that are begging, that are begging for more time, Just because they recommend 10 hours doesn't mean it's a strict rule. Yes. It is up to you to know how you're progressing, to reflect and go, all right, that one's difficult. I need to spend more time on that. Not in a way that's going to neglect your progression in other courses, but in a way that's fair given how you go with the content. Yeah, so that's probably my biggest point for that one, and it's to be consistent in how you're dividing that time. So not maintaining it throughout, maintaining consistency in reflecting, in understanding your progression in the courses, and making sure that you are flexible to move those times around and where you're going to dedicate it. And the third point, which is really kind of ties in with that one as well, and how you divide your time, is prioritizing. So it's very easy to, at uni, we really try and emphasize balancing lots of parts of your life. So uni with work, with extracurricular, with social activities, with family activities, whatever it may be that you've got going on in your life. It's important to really remember that you are going into this degree. You are. So you're putting the money in, whether it's HEX, whether you're paying out of pocket, whatever it is, it's money. It's your money. Yeah. And it's important to really put some value on that and understand that if you're putting the money in, you should put in the time and you should put in the effort. So when things come up in a trimester, maybe your friend's throwing a party on a Saturday and you've got an assignment due Monday and you're not done. You still have stuff to do, and maybe you're trying to convince yourself and be like, no, I can do it the night before. It's perfectly fine. Do you want to be in that position though? Maybe you're cool with it. That's on you. But hopefully you're watching this video because you want to do things better. You want to think ahead. You want to really make your life easier in the long run and not as stressful. So those type of situations are where we need to prioritize, and oftentimes where we need to make sacrifices. So in 5 years, is it going to be a huge deal that you missed out on one party? Or is it going to be a bit of a bigger deal that, you let academics spiral for things that are only momentary? You're hopefully going to graduate with this degree and go on and do something that you enjoy, something that you love and that you want to be in, and really develop on. So emphasizing that degree, to make sacrifices, to prioritize what's important in your life and what's important in your studies and what's important when you study and what you study. It's a big commitment to make. So I think it's really important to understand when you need to prioritize. So that's something that I always keep in mind as I'm scheduling. And in saying all that, I still would like to emphasize that it's still important to have that balance. So the entire trimester isn't sacrifices, but there are some here and there that we know we can let go, but sometimes we just don't want to. So that's important to always think about as well. So actually, talking about planning and where do we start and how does that start to look as we start planning? And I said earlier on some other things about just jumping into it and really
getting started.
Really and I think it's important.
That's the hardest part sometimes, is to just start.
Yeah, things can be really overwhelming. I know that for sometimes when I just start dumping everything that's on my brain just to really free up the cognitive capacity, the ability to have some room to think. It can be very daunting looking at that list of stuff, but it's important that we start somewhere with how we start scheduling, how we start planning, how we start listing and collating all the important information we need to know in a week or a month or a trimester. So I've got some examples of my to-do list from first year, and I find them a little cringy because
I like them.
I think that my planning skills have really developed over the years, and to me this is not nearly enough information to jump into my studies, but that's my personal preference. Objectively, it's a really good start what I've got here. I've started listing now for each of my courses what are some of the things I need to do, and luckily I've got some ticks there, so I was doing some stuff, but I think for me it definitely works by I love dates. I love having due dates. I love having knowing what week things came out and what week they should be done. That's really important for me in orientating how I study and where I'm going to prioritize. But I think it's just important that we start somewhere. So you might not have previously done more than maybe writing something down on a to-do list,
To
like
be
a little
honest,
post-it note
yeah.
maybe. And that's even an amazing
That's a great
start.
start. At least you're getting things off your mind and
Mhm.
freeing up that brain space. Like this, at the end of the day, you can't hold it all in your head.
Yeah.
Especially a really big to-do list as you start going into the trimester, because
Yeah.
there's a few lectures to watch, there's a few assessments to do,
Mm.
there's a few workshops to prepare
Mhm.
for. If you only have that in your brain, chances are you might forget a couple or more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And on top of that, retaining your to-do list in your head while also trying to actually learn,
Oh,
it's just bombarding your brain
My
with
poor
information.
brain.
You can easily free up so much capacity to take in new information
Yeah.
just by writing down
Yeah.
everything that you have been keeping in your
Yeah.
head. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
brain dumping.
yeah.
Brain dump it, and at least that's started. You can always organize it later, but
Yeah.
the most important thing is to just get it started.
Yeah, so if you're not even sure where to start, just start there. Write down everything that's on your head right now, everything you need to do,
Yep.
everything you need to look at. And once you've got that, then you can start thinking, okay, how can I break this down?
Yep.
How can I categorize it? How can I go, this one's a priority, this one's not, this one's eh.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't be deterred by the fact that, because as we start to talk about our to-do lists now and how we schedule now, it can seem really complex or
Yeah.
like we've got a whole design to it.
Yeah.
And we kind of do, but it took a lot of time.
Oh.
I did not start there, and even now I'm still developing how I do my own scheduling and to-do
100%.
lists.
It took me a really long time to figure out a system that works for me. And I mean,
Mhm.
I'll talk about that a bit more later, I suppose. But I think one of the really important things to remember here is that it's really personal. Shay and I do planning. There's some similarities, but also really massive differences.
Mm.
But what works for her may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for her, and that's okay. At the end of the day,
Mm.
we're getting things done. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, so experiment, try
Yeah.
different things, and see what works for you. Who knows? You might come up with something completely different and new.
Yes, that would be amazing.
And we would love to hear
We
about
would
it.
love to see it too.
But yeah, there's definitely differences. I'm more of a paper girl. I love having things physically in front of me, and for me, that helps me even be able to retain a general sense of what's going on a little bit easier. So moving forward into what it actually has developed into and what it looks like now, things are a lot more complex. And I tried to have enough up on there so you can have an idea of what a to-do list looks like, but this is actually a 2-page and I've just taken a snippet from the front. So things do look hectic when I write it all down sometimes, but I think I've become comfortable in how I write down all my information, and for me, it makes sense.
Yeah.
This is absolutely easy to understand what's going on, but for someone else it might look like a hot mess. So I definitely try and break things down into my courses and then as well into weeks, and I really like to emphasize things like assessment and workshops and things where I'm going to go in. They're clear as day to me, they're in bright yellow, they're bolded, you guys can see that too. So that's how I really like to detail my nitty-gritty to-do list. So everything I need to do in a week, maybe even for the next week, maybe even for a week ahead, depending what I've gone and deemed important, and things that I should be starting on in, say, week 5, even if it's due in week 8. It will come onto my to-do list then. And you can kind of see in this that I've color-coded between my detailed to-do list. So I've got molecular biology as a beautiful green. And then when we look on the right to my summary table, so that's also in green. So it's really easy for me to spot out exactly what is in a certain time slot without having to really flip around. Like, I just know green is molecular biology. So, and talking about that summary table, so that's kind of everything I put in that is set in stone. I have to be there at that time. I have to watch that lecture at that time, attend that review session, whatever it is. Sometimes there's personal things on there, appointments, whatever. Things that I can't move around. I make sure that they're on there set in stone. And when I can look, and then when I step back and look at it at a glance, I can see all those spaces that I can really utilize for my studies. So I'm pretty lucky in that everything's pretty flexible usually when I do put up these summary tables. And hopefully you'll be able to spot those time periods where you can really utilize them and maximize your study time by squishing it in those little breaks we get sometimes, instead of maybe just sitting on your phone for an hour, which
Ooh.
it's very
We're
tempting.
guilty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not perfect
We're
here,
not
but
perfect.
it's prioritizing, constantly prioritizing, constantly thinking about your progression in the trimester, and remaining hyper aware of whether you're putting in enough time and whether you should be trying to dedicate more and juggle things
100%.
around. So those are pretty much my to-do list now. They've definitely developed over time, and they're still developing, and I really try with this to-do list. So I do it on Word now as opposed to completely on paper like the initial copy, because one, having a template makes things quicker and easier, and two, I can print that out. So I can keep a copy here, I can keep a copy in my home, I can keep a copy at uni, whatever it may be, in my backpack, and I always have it on my laptop, obviously. So just the way my phone and laptop are set up, I can actually access my schedule through my phone. So I can always go in and check it. So I have no excuse if I leave it at home. I still can go look up.
Sadly,
I
there's
can
no
still
excuse.
look up what I've got to do, or I can look at that summary table. And on top of that summary table, I just like to also say that I do put things on an electronic calendar in my phone as well, and that's predominantly so that I can set reminders. Things for assessment, I love to have a reminder 2 weeks ahead of time just to get me sweating a little bit, but that's just some things that I do, and that's still just a portion of it, but it's a really core part of how I organize my studies and what I do in a week.
So I suppose I can jump in here now. So these are my planning tips, and they really stem from the fact that I was a procrastinator. I say was. I'm not saying that I don't procrastinate now. There's definitely times where I feel like I put off a task, but definitely not to the same extent. So, like I said before, I was a mature age student, and when I came into university, I knew that I was gonna have to overcome that issue. So I had to do a lot of reading, basically, on why we procrastinate, right? And what I found was that the reason we procrastinate is usually because we feel overwhelmed by the task. So either we don't know how to approach it, we're afraid that we're going to fail on it, or we just really don't know how to even get started. Like, what does it actually...
Where is the starting
Yeah,
point?
how do I break it down into components? And one of the tips that they had to overcome it was to really develop good planning habits, and which is... That's kind of why I am where I am now with my planning habits, and I hope that's a good context, because we're going to kind of keep touching back on that. So, like Shay, we kind of have some similarities, but also some differences, and I think the main differences is basically the platform that we use to do the planning, right? But some similarities. I also don't like to micromanage my time, and I also like to color code. I think color coding is fantastic. So I use Google Calendar to do my overall planning of my week and my trimester. At the beginning of the trimester, I put in all of my contact hours there, so all lectures, workshop, labs, and definitely the assessments. Those are really important, and on my planner, as you can see here, they're usually highlighted in red so that I can't miss them. If I look at that week, I knew it's going to be an assessment-heavy week, which means like 3-4 weeks in advance, I should have been preparing for that week already. I also like to set alarms like Shay for the really important things like assessments or even labs. So when I first got started, I'd put everything down in a calendar, but I won't always check it because I'm not used to it yet, right? So sometimes I'd put in the effort to put it there, but I actually still forget things, which is really, really bad. So one of the things that I used to overcome that was alarms. So setting an alarm at the beginning of the week to say, okay, check your calendar, or definitely setting an alarm for all of those assessments or all of those things that I definitely don't want to miss, have been really, really good, to the point that now I hardly actually use alarms, because I know at the beginning of every week, and definitely, to be honest, every day, I am checking
multiple times
during the day, I am checking that calendar, making sure I don't forget. And then that's just a habit that I built over time. But also, within the whole calendar and color coding, the reason I do that is because I like to put in things beyond just uni. Again, trying to keep in mind that there is life outside of uni, and I still want to make sure that they're accounted for and that when I look at my week, it's a realistic view of my week. That way I know that I can fit in the right amount of hours of study every week. So if that week is too full of extracurricular activities or things that are not necessarily study, and I'm not giving my studies enough attention that week, then I'm going to have to relook at that week. I'm going to have to go, okay, can I move an appointment to the next week when I have more free time? Like, where can I catch up on study? Because I need to be putting in every week the right amount of hours. Another app that I use to really help the productivity to keep going is Notion. So I said before that I tend to procrastinate, and one of the reasons for that is because I feel overwhelmed by things. So a big to-do list for me does not work. So I like to put in, at the beginning of the trimester, I like to put in all the tasks that I need to do for each course, which is a big task. It usually takes me a day, but at least they're all listed somewhere already, right? However, if I just have that big list, the chances of me going and doing that list is very minimal. Because it seems like a lot. It doesn't seem like I'm gonna do it all, and I shouldn't, because it's for the whole trimester. I can't do that all in a day or a week. However, through Notion, what I'm actually able to do is apply filtering on all of my to-do lists. So I can filter by day, I can filter by week, I can even filter by type if I want to. But what I usually use is the by day, right? Because when you filter your all your tasks by day, it really breaks it down into its smaller components. So instead of having 300 things on my list, I usually have 6, and that's so much more doable. I only have to tick through 6 things on my to-do list that day. I can do that. Another thing that I like to do, especially for the big assessments, is I break them down into smaller chunks. So if I have a 40% report, I put that in my list as 4 components, maybe, as opposed to just that one big thing. Yes, I'll still put the one big thing as the due date, but I will also make a to-do list that says, do the research, or get introduction written, or get content written, or edit the first draft. So already breaking down that big task into smaller tasks tricks my brain into actually doing it, because it is smaller. It's not as huge. Whereas if I just do this 40% assignment in one go, I won't even know how to tackle that. Where do I even get started? So that's a trick that I use to trick my brain.
And I think that's like a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
It's like really trying to make things as achievable as possible by trying not to constantly
overwhelm yourself.
Yourself with the big picture. Obviously have an understanding of progression and where the direction is going with a course, but not being overwhelmed that, I need to attend, 10 labs and this many workshops and that many lectures and this many hours. Before you know it, you're just going to count yourself out by thinking about how big the mountain is. But one step at a time, one day at a time, one task at a time, you'll be surprised just how much you really can achieve by breaking things down and making them a lot more achievable for yourself.
100%. And I think that kind of melds into, I suppose, my third point, which is to really remain engaged with the process. So on the previous slide, you'd see as well that I had, thanks Shay, I have my revision schedule there, and I guess it's a good example of how I remain engaged with my planning process. So not letting the schedule dictate what I do, but actually making it work for me. So with revision, what people usually do is plan when they're going to do the revision, whereas I note down when I did that revision. And then I also note down how I'm going with that topic. Right, so for example, if I'm coming in and I'm looking at my revision schedule and I can see that I haven't revised this topic for a really, really long time. However, I could see that my retention for it is actually really, really good, to the point that I could probably answer the workshop questions with all my notes closed and give as much detail as possible. And I also have topic that maybe I revised A bit later than the first one, but are really still needing a lot of attention. So I have minimal retention on it. So what I have to do is prioritize that topic. So again, kind of going back to Shay's point earlier about equity as opposed to equality of time spent on courses, there's some things that will just take longer to get through. And unfortunately, you just have to put in the effort, more effort in those topics or in those courses as well. So remain engaged. Think of ways where you can remain engaged with your planning process. Don't let it be a passive thing. Really know what's going on. Really know how you can utilize it so that it serves your purpose and what you want to actually achieve out of it.
Definitely. I think it's a thing of constantly reflecting on your progress, on how you feel, on your confidence in topics, and reflecting that in your planning as well. So
100%.
there's so much that comes into it, but if you just tackle it day by day, week by week, anything is really possible. And sometimes it feels overwhelming, but it can be possible. But I think it's also important, and as the slide said before, that some days will be more productive than
100%.
others, and that's okay. It's completely okay to have days where you're exhausted. Maybe you're working as well. Maybe it's just like you worked on an assignment all yesterday and now you just cannot imagine. Your brain is mush.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think even then, as we said, we're emphasizing reflecting and remaining engaged with things. If you are aware that even if you try today to really do something, remaining aware that sometimes it's not going to be achievable. If we're exhausted and you're going to try and drag yourself through and trying to work on an assignment or answer workshop questions or whatever it may be, and it's not, immediately urgent and pending, knowing that it's probably a better idea just to take a break, whether it's an hour, whether it's 2 hours, whether it's half a day or a day, whatever it may be that you need, probably not like a week. That's probably really pushing. If it's at that point, that's special consideration we're talking about here. So I think definitely just remaining aware of how you are as you're a human being. You can't be full on all the time, and there's going to be times where you've just pushed it, and we need to take a day to recover so that we can come back and actually apply ourselves and really make our studies, everything we do, worthwhile.
Rest is really important as well, and I think actually we'll touch on that on the other video about study techniques, because at the end of the day it is actually a really important study technique. Resting is really helpful for us to consolidate information, so don't feel bad if you need to take a rest. We all need to take a rest. I like to think that I'm always running at 100% capacity, but that's definitely not true.
No.
Sometimes when I think, okay, I'm exhausted, but I'm still going to get through a topic, that doesn't usually happen. So I've wasted the time that I could have used to rest.
Actually rest.
Yes, because nothing probably went in my brain trying to get through the topic when I literally had no capacity to do it anyway. So don't feel bad about resting. Trust that you have, if you've implemented these techniques and hopefully you have a planner and you have planned your trimester, trust that you have done enough that you can still catch up later, or that you're actually ahead of things anyway, right? Hopefully. It's hard sometimes to get ahead, but at least you have the capacity to catch up. So keep that in mind, and be kind to yourself at the end of the day is what we're trying to say here.
100%. So I think
some really useful resources as well to help you out even further in case these ones really kind of intrigue you into exploring a bit more. One Notion, the app that I use, in case you don't know, it's free for students as well. The Pro Plan is completely free for students, which is quite awesome. That means you have unlimited access to it. So check it out. There's also a heap of template that people has done already, which is quite amazing, quite a great community that you can duplicate and use as your own, or even develop into your own as well. Like we said before, planning is usually very, very personal, so it might not work for you, but maybe that can help you get started. Another guy to check out will be Ali Abdal. He's a YouTuber, in case you haven't seen him before. Fantastic videos all about study strategies, but also planning. So how he plan his year, his trimester, his life is actually quite inspiring. So if you kind of want some extra resources around that, would recommend this guy.
Awesome. So continuing on with extra resources, these are some at Griffith University. So a really big one, especially with remaining engaged, is PASS, so peer assisted study sessions. So I'm actually a PASS leader as well, so I'm obviously a big advocate for PASS, and not just from my PASS leader perspective, but I've went to PASS. I spent an entire trimester 100% dedicated, going to as many PASS sessions as I could, and comparing that to a trimester, so I started T1 in my first year and I didn't attend PASS, and the impact that attending PASS in trimester 2 had on not just my grades and my performance overall, but also in the sheer amount of time that I was spending on study. It was extremely significant. I saved so much time. We say it all the time, 1 hour of PASS equals 4 hours of personal study. And study after study shows it. And it's because the study that you do in PASS is so effective. It's like studying with your friends. Maybe you know people in there, but maybe you don't.
But you get to meet people there as well. So people who are doing the same courses as you, and you know, eventually maybe you guys can form your own study group outside of PASS for subsequent years where you may not have PASS anymore. Exactly.
So it's a really great opportunity to remain engaged with your course and to also get that extra support and be surrounded by people who are also determined to succeed and do well. And I know I've definitely picked up tips on everything from scheduling to how people approach their study, from just talking with people in PASS. So if you haven't gone, give it a go. Hopefully PASS is supported in some of your courses. We're starting to introduce more second year PASS sessions as well, which has been really helpful for a lot of people. And another really important resource I would like to recommend is kind of us. So the Back on Academic Track program, we're really just here, especially as mentors, we're here to support you and help direct you and point you in the right direction of all those resources and programs that are available within Griffith University. So there are just so many. There's so many programs, resources, bits of information, applications, experiences that you can do. But because there is so many, it's hard to know all of them. So that's kind of where we come in, and we can really help point you towards the right direction, the right people you need to talk to really get you, as we say, back on academic track and to make sure you're sailing in the right direction there. So hit us up. You can look up Bode and Griffith. The first page that comes up, you'll be able to figure it out. And another really important one is the Griffith mentors. So these are the people that are going to be able to help you with really starting to implement assignments and even getting a little bit of feedback on structure and how you're going to reference and research. I know referencing was like a big hurdle for me coming into university.
Research was like, how do you even get started? Like, how do you look for anything? How do you look
who's reliable?
Right?
Where do I, like, the library's got so many things and I didn't know for ages, so I might be silly.
There's a lot of textbooks in there.
100%. So even just maybe even saving on not having to buy a textbook. These are things that we can really start to think about here. And if these guys, everyone else doesn't answer your questions and you still have concerns or things that you want to ask or know about, student support's a really good point of call. So that's everything from support with finances to
health and well-being.
Health and well-being, counselling support, whatever it may be, wherever you may want support or need support. These are the people that you're going to want to check in with, and really, they know everything.
So if we don't know, they will know. We'll definitely know.
So check those out. Hopefully something hits with you and you can actually use within your degree as well. So if that isn't enough information, we also just like to recommend the Student Success Guide. So this is usually developed at the start of every year so that it's relevant and up to date, and they're usually housed within organisation sites. So if you go to, you know, you're learning at Griffith and you go up into where it's got like learning at Griffith, courses, organisations, if you click that organisation tab, it'll bring up all the organisations you're a part of. So one of them should be the BOAT program, and you usually also have your program site. So we have a Bachelor of Biomedical Science program site.
There's definitely a link there.
And you might have a Bachelor of Science, and they're usually always embedded in there. If not, it's 100% within the BOAT org site. So it's just got a little bit of everything. So stuff we're talking about and stuff beyond that. So if you're already feeling pretty good about this and are already looking forward to more opportunities, more resources, how am I going to not only finish my degree, but come out of it
really
with more than that. That's the place to really check out as well. So hopefully those are really important, and those are going to put you in a really great position moving forward. But if you're in a position now where perhaps things went wrong last trimester or the trimester before, or whenever it happened, or even knowing this for the future, there is something called withdrawal due to special circumstances. And this is basically an application you can make, and it is to, as it says, withdraw, but this is after census date. So we talked about census date and knowing that date, and it's very important, but sometimes things happen beyond our control, and they really impact us in our studies after census date. So we've got all the information up there for you guys. We talk about it in a bit more detail in our previous videos, so you can always check that out. But I just want to really bring this up to make sure that everyone gets to see this and know about this, because it's super useful. And life isn't straightforward, and you can never know whether things are going to come up during a trimester and how they're going to impact you. And this is just a really nice, reassuring, like almost a backup plan to have in case things do go wrong. This is always there.
It's life. It happens.
100%. And if you're not sure whether your circumstances apply, or whether you've got enough evidence, or whatever it may be, I would still say put in your application.
Definitely.
The worst that's going to happen is it's not approved. And of course
that's quite bad, but
that it's not.
It's where you are already as it is.
Of course that's not ideal. We would love an approved application, but the worst that's going to happen is you are where you are. The best case scenario is if you are approved, whatever your grade was that trimester, fail or 1 or 2 or 3, whatever it is, if you were impacted, that will now be changed to a withdrawal. So usually that means your GPA will immediately be boosted. Whatever was dragging it down isn't there anymore. And if you're really lucky in your application and that it's approved, you can get your money back a lot of the time. So not always, but hopefully. And so even if something hasn't gone wrong yet, hopefully you can keep this in the back of your mind, or even tell someone if they come up to you and they go, I had a horrible trimester.
Hardly anyone knew about this. I definitely did not know it before the boat program.
No, I it's kind of a shame that it's not talked about more, but here you guys are listening, so hopefully you get to walk away with this knowing that, all right, if things go wrong and I can't control anything, there is still this. I can at least put in an application and try.
100%.
And I think we'll round it off with a bit of a checklist here.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully these are the key things that you can walk away with at the end of these workshops. Not just this one, but if you watch the whole series, then hopefully this will kind of tack onto those as well. But basically just a summary of what you can do to really get you started and set up for a new trimester, right? So first one would be to check your course profile and to take note of those assessments and those learning activities. If you haven't watched the first video in the series yet, we kind of really go into detail about course profiles and what you can actually take away from your course profile. What are the key things? Because it's quite a hefty document. Another one would be to know when your workshops and lectures are, and also labs if you have labs. Use a planner, so like what we talked about here, start that planning journey by at least noting down what your contact hours are, what your sessions are looking like every week. Planning when your assessments are going to be due and when you're actually going to do them. Again, including that in your planner is also really useful and really important at the beginning of the trimester. So that way you are prepared, you know when you're going to do them, and you are not caught out in the middle of the trimester going, oh no, did I miss out on certain assessments? And then finally, a reminder to set a reminder for your census date. So I have an alarm for all census dates because that is the last day to withdraw without financial penalty. So for trimester 1 2021, that is 4th of April 2021. However, if you're watching this in a different trimester or even a different year, check your academic calendar. It's usually the one highlighted in a different color, usually blue I think, but they could change that. So just look out for the census day highlighted. And I think that's it. That's it from us.
Hopefully you guys pulled something away from it. I know it helps always seeing examples of things. So hopefully something sparked with you and you're going to walk away and really think about how you tackle your course and how you organize it. And is there a better way? Is there anything you can incorporate? Anything you can try that's maybe new? Even looking up, like Pauline did, why we procrastinate, whatever it may be, whatever you take away from this, hopefully it's useful. And like we said in our previous video, we really dived into the course profile, and in our next video we're going to dive into some actual study skills, like
that would be a good one.
What do they look like? So we talk about studying and fitting in that time, but how do you make it effective, and how do you really make sure that you're not just reading and
how do you make good use of your time, because we all know we're time poor, but how do we make it really effective? Anyway, you're gonna have to watch that video.
So that's it from us. We'll see you in the next video, I guess.
Thank you,
bye.